Hi crafty friends, it's Donna here, back for another one paper pack, 10 cards video. I'm using sketches from Sandy Allnock's Operation Right Home and Paper Rose Studios Rainbow Twirl 2.0 paper pack. You might notice something about the next photo that says something about the way I work. I spent a long time getting these cards lined up perfectly, and it was only when I went to edit the photo that I realised that there was a problem with one of them. Did you spot it? Let's have a really quick look at the papers before we start. There are 3 sets of 6 double-sided papers in the pack with a mix of geometrics, watercolour look pages, and also some fun images. I've also made a video using the Rainbow Twirl original pack, and if you'd like to have a look for that, there's a whole lot more ideas there that would work beautifully for this pack too. And here are the sketches we're going to be working with today. I'm up to sketches 61 through 70. I like to lay out the sketches to begin with to see if there's anything that would work well with the paper pack that I'm using. And I've noticed that this final sketch with its beautiful semicircle reaching into the card will be perfect for that wreath. And I'm also planning to switch out some of those little elements for the little circle wreaths so that I use the circle instead of a heart in some of those. On to card 1. The original sketch shows 2 thicker and 1 thin stripe on that feature panel, but I've made my thin stripe by cutting a small strip off one of the panels so that the background will show through as that thin strip. You'll notice through this video that I'm cutting up a lot of blue fun foam. In part of my cleaning of my crafty space, I've come across a few pieces of fun foam in blue and white, and I'm going to try to use those up rather than use my foam tape for these cards. This paper pack doesn't have sentiments in it, and so I'm going to be using both the Better Days Ahead cut-aparts and also the Rainbow Poppies sentiment sheets. Between those two, I found a really good range of colours for all of my cards. Both of these sets have some little tickets as some of their sentiments, and I'm going to show you a couple of different things that you can do with those tickets during the course of this video. And here's the first complete card. For this next sketch, number 62, I'm going to add a couple of flowers using this Moira flower die. And unfortunately, I lost some of the footage. But what I've done is I've cut those little blue sepals from the background piece of paper. You can't see it there because sadly the footage is lost, but I didn't use an extra piece of paper for those little blue pits. There's just a hidden hole in the panel behind. Now this sketch actually has an error on it. When I used the original measurements, I ended up with a much wider panel, and it looked completely different to the original sketch. And so I've worked out, in order to get a sketch that looks like the one on the page, the width of the square needs to be 2.25 inches, and the width of the whole panel needs to be 2.5 inches. You'll notice that I've written the centimetres onto all of these panels. If you're living in Australia or Europe, or anywhere else in the world that uses metric paper, feel free to use those measurements and you will have a card that matches up perfectly with your own paper. And I've made a chart that helps you to make those conversions, and there's a video on how to do that. But for today, I've just written those measurements on. The cards I've made today are actually in inches, but as you will see at the end of the video, there is plenty of leftover and you should be able to make them either way. Just a little word about background papers. I've chosen a bunch of bright papers for this pack because only a tiny bit sticks out the side. They don't need to be thick cardstock. I've chosen to use one of my favourite papers from the whole pack for sketch 63 because there's an opportunity to have a really big piece of it. I absolutely love this wood grain chevron panel. This card features a heart as its main element, and I love hearts. Oh, great pun me, love hearts. But I don't use them on that many cards because I think it limits the occasion and the person that I can use them for. And so I'm going to omit that and use a really big sentiment that actually covers that area. I'm cutting out this hand-lettered thanks from some gold shimmer paper, and I've layered that up with 2 layers. so that it's got a little bit of height and a bit more presence on the card. And I'm also going to use one of these So Extra sentiments. These are all sentiments that are designed to work alongside of bigger stamps or bigger die cuts. And often the first word on the page is the key to the words that that'll best go with. So this page here starts with the word thanks. And I trialled a couple of options before deciding on For Everything, so that this card reads, Thanks for Everything. As always, I'm just running my Memento Tuxedo Black marker around the outside of my sentiment so that it hides the white core of the card. The next sketch gave me another chance to highlight another favourite paper from the pack. This time it's this beautiful leaf design that looks like flames, and it's quite an unusual design, with just one rectangle up in the top right hand corner. Once again, I've decided to switch out the heart, and instead I've used one of these abstract trees. This is a 2-layer die, and once again I've actually used these to make a whole video of cards for the 4 different seasons of the trees. It's one of my favourite videos. I'm going to pop that tree up and the sentiment, both with a little bit of height. And this quick and easy sketch is done. Isn't that paper stunning? While I have those abstract trees out, I'm going to use them for the next sketch as well. Once again, I'm choosing to make that middle strip by just cutting my pieces of paper a little bit smaller, rather than adding an extra piece of paper. I'm going to add the abstract tree as my main element, and I've switched out the bow tie on this card as well. Even though it's adorable, I'm going to use one of those ticket sentiments that says thank you for a super quick and easy card that's just got so much vibrant colour on it thanks to the papers. I'm going to mix things up a little bit for this next sketch. The sketch shows 3 different strips of varying sizes, but I've added those sizes together and cut a blue panel, and then added my strips to that with some foam tape. It was just a nice quick and easy way of having all 3 strips and a border all in one. I've added a little bit of spare foam to the middle so that my sentiment doesn't sink, and used this beautiful happy birthday from the Better Days Ahead sentiments. And this is the offending card that ended up upside down in my photo. This sketch number 67 is really simple, and this time I am going to add an extra strip of paper across the middle, and I've chosen the most difficult way to do it, which is to cut a thin strip and glue that down. Being January, I have quite a few of my planner stamps out, and so I'm going to use one of those instead of a tag. And then I'm using one of those ticket sentiments, but I'm going to cut through the middle so that it just works as a strip sentiment this time. Many of those tickets would work for this technique. I've glued them together so that they're one sentiment, and then added my foam tape to the back before gluing the whole thing down. This sketch is another one with a heart on it. It's a very, very simple design with just a panel across the middle. And honestly, you could change up the width of this. It would be a great way to use up leftover strips at the end of your card making. I've switched out the heart for one of the rainbow wreaths. And I cut a few of these using different sized circles. This one is a super tight cut, and I've actually just cut off a couple of little bits from the edges of the wreath. I could have made it bigger, but I thought this size worked well with the sketch. But as always, you do you. This next sketch once again has a bow, and I'm honestly not very good at bows, so once again there'll be a substitution. I've cut the 3 strips, and I'm going to use the lines on my grid mat to get them into position. Once I'm sure I like where they are, I've positioned the card along a central line, and I'm going to glue down that center strip first, and then put down the strip on the left and the right, based on where that middle one is. Once again, I'm going to use one of these circle wreaths as my main element, and I've cut this one with a slightly larger circle so that it has a little bit of extra around the outside. This happy birthday just finishes off, again, a nice simple card, but I think they look so effective and so happy with these bright colours. For this final card, I'm going to use the big wreath that was on one of the papers. And first of all, I found a circle from my Stacking Circles die that was the right size to cut the wreath out. I didn't worry too much about the size of the card yet. I just got a nice cut around the wreath. Then I laid it on my card where I wanted it and cut around the edge of that with my scissors. Once I've got this strip down, I can then flip my wreath piece horizontally, and that will show me exactly where that higher piece in the middle is going to be. That will really help me to put my foam in the right places. The gap in the middle is a little bit big, and so I think I'm going to need just a little piece of foam. And I'm using that because it's slightly thinner than the rest of that foam, and so it's going to compensate for the extra paper that's in the middle. And here's where we made the next mistake. I went to open up this card to do my check, and I'd stuck the whole thing on upside down. My glue was all dry, with the exception of the glue on the sentiment, and so I quickly peeled that off and stuck it on upside down, and then quickly turned the sketch upside down. So it looked deliberate. Nobody will ever know, right? Here's what's left over after making these 10 cards. There's a lot, including a full sheet of my favourites. There's a bunch of strips that would easily make major card elements, and a whole lot of smaller pieces. I hope that you've enjoyed these cards, and that you're inspired to have a look through your favourite patterned papers and see if you can match some images and colours to them. Until next time, I hope that your days are super. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I will be back soon. Bye for now.